Hello, everybody. We're excited to have you to join us today for our webinar on how Itential helps NetOps teams apply DevOps source control and promotion principles to network automations. Before we dive in, my name is Morgan Stern. I'm the VP of Automation Strategy at Itential, and I'm joined by Mitch Veazey, who's one of our automation engineers. How are you doing today, Mitch?
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Morgan.
Excellent. During today's webinar, we'll be describing how teams can incorporate DevOps principles like source control and code promotion in their automation development process. If you have any questions, please ask them along the way in the chat window, and we'll answer them in chat. So let's get started. I wanted to set the stage, seeing as this is one of a series of CI/CD and DevOps webinars that we've been having over the past few months, and be able to kind of talk about how today's session is going to be different, but in some respects, how today's session is going to be the same. Early on, we did a couple of webinars where the focus was an application developer persona, where the primary usage of the pipeline was the app developer trying to deploy new application. And so part of what we were showing in that webinar was how those application developers can, within their pipeline, consume network services to streamline the application deployment process. Then, more recently, we started showing how a network engineer could leverage some of the same principles, some of the same process models to be able to leverage a pipeline to get enhanced testing capability, as well as enhanced ability to deploy network changes within the context of the pipeline. Today's session, we're going to stay with pipelines, but we're going to talk about how you can leverage DevOps and CI/CD as the mechanism for managing the development, testing, promotion, and release of your automation assets themselves. So the idea is, let's take advantage of a mature process model, but let's basically change what it is that we're pushing through that process model. So today, we're talking about automation assets. When I talk about automation assets, you can interpret that to be a number of different kinds of assets. That could be automation workflows. That could be templates that you use, things like Jinja 2 or TextFSM. Could be scripts like Ansible or Python scripts. Could be playbooks. Could be forms. Could be data transformations. And what we've seen as folks have embarked on their automation journey, typically it'll start with a handful of assets. They might write a Python script or an Ansible playbook, but over time, as they have success with that, it starts to grow. They want to add additional functionality. They want to support additional use cases. Pretty quickly, in an unmanaged situation, these assets can start to get quite uh, like a multitude, and they can start to really become more and more difficult to manage. We've seen this happen in a number of environments where they start small, it starts to grow. At a certain point, it becomes a huge effort to be able to manage all of those automation assets. So today, what we're going to talk about is some of the methodologies that you can use to have a model that you can not only use to promote the assets, but also to manage them and manage their development. In working with networking teams globally, we've started to assist them in developing best practices for building and managing large libraries of automation assets. And inevitably, what we start to see is when you start to build components, you have choices. You can either start to build like monolithically, like a very big, uh, very complex single playbooks or scripts, or you can start to break them into pieces. Our philosophy has always been around looking towards modularization as an opportunity to get reuse, to get better manageability, and to get better leverage of existing functionality. What you find, though, when you start to break things into components is you might have dependencies. So you might have built a module to do a port assignment. That port assignment may be dependent on certain versions of Python. It may be dependent on other scripts. And so being able to track and manage those dependencies becomes an important activity that you need to incorporate into your overall process. The other thing that we've done a lot of work with folks on is helping them to define their automation asset architecture. And what I mean by that is helping them develop guidelines and rules and best practices for deciding how do I organize functionality that then gets replicated and developed into an automation. Do I do want to try to do multiple things in one chunk, or do I want to start to break them into to components? If I do break them into components, what are the rules of thumb that I should be using to kind of modularize things? That helps then have some consistency in how the development happens, and ideally, that set of rules gets permeated throughout the organization, so that as the team of folks who are developing the automation assets grows, they have more consistency and better ability to share across teams. One part of that is defining and adhering to some kind of standards for things like naming conventions. It becomes really critical in being able to understand pretty quickly what a component can do. If you go into a repo and there's multiple different things that say port assignment, port assignment, port assignment, it'd be great if the naming standard was robust enough to give at least enough information so that the asset could be utilized efficiently. And a lot of problems around how do you start to build things in a more consistent and repeatable way, which is things that we've been covering in these webinars, is looking to DevOps principles, looking to things like CI/CD methodologies to be able to think about how can I take these assets and treat them more like code, and what are the principles I can leverage to be able to get a better grasp of managing all of these components. So when you think about CI/CD, a big part of CI/CD is a mind shift away from big monolithic applications, which would have very long release cycles, to a more continuous development, continuous deployment model where changes were happening in much smaller, more modular, more incremental fashion. And the way that was going to be possible was by leveraging pipelines, leveraging automated test capability, leveraging a lot of the tools that exist in the market today to be able to automate a lot of the activities that would normally happen as part of a release cycle, and really push that into the point where things can be highly repeatable without becoming super labor intensive. So the practices that we have translated from the typical application development CI/CD world would be things like more modularization of your code. It would be about leveraging tools like repositories for doing version control and some dependency management, as well as using tools to provide automated testing and deployment. And the whole idea here is automation assets really are code, but you need to treat them like code. They need to be less of a handcrafted, specialized single thing, and think about how can I apply software development best practices and principles to the way I'm developing some of these assets. And so that really applies to it needs to be things that you're thinking about testing up front. You're thinking about how you're going to manage the assets up front. You need to keep where we're saying here, hygiene is critical. You need to use best practices like documentation and comments in your code, good adherence to standardization, just so that it becomes an asset that can be used within a larger context. Now I'm going to hand things over to Mitch so he can start to talk about some of the capabilities that we have built into the Itential platform to help our users start to treat their automation assets like code. Mitch?
Thanks, Morgan. Exactly as you mentioned, right? Automations in Itential are code files and can be treated as such like any other code repository, say on a Git version control service like GitLab or GitHub, as well as for CI/CD pipelines on those Git version control service for um, deployment and other utilities that you would want to have in your pipeline. Additionally, Itential offers open source packages of our own, which we call pre-builts for pre-built promotion and pre-built wizard, which we'll be demoing today to demonstrate how you can create your own network automation package as a pre-built and promote that to a Git version control service before finally deploying that to a staging target IAP server. Lastly, I wanted to mention the additional value of the feature that which you can import this pre-built or packaged network automation directly in IAP in App Admin Essentials, or using the API to import to App Admin Essentials, which are out of the box CI/CD pipeline with pre-built promotion is going to leverage. I'll move on to the next slide, where I'll be giving an overview of that demo that I mentioned, where step one is the network automation engineer in their dev IAP environment builds their automation assets like workflows, transformations, JSON forms, etc. All the pieces that make a network automation what it is and perform its functions. The next step, as I mentioned, would be to package those automation assets into what we call a pre-built automation, which makes for easy CI/CD, using it all together as a package rather than having to handle individual code files for a network automation. Step three will be promoting that packaged network automation to a Git version control service, where it can automatically trigger a CI/CD pipeline to deploy those automation assets, and thus the network automation use case, to a staging environment of IAP for quality assurance testing and verification that that network automation meets the use case requirements, as well as complies with security and any other requirements for your organization and your team's network automations accordingly. Let's say during that QA process, which we see on screen as step 5, it is found that the network automation should need further updates before being promoted to a higher environment, like a production environment. We go back to step 1, where in the dev environment, those updates can be corrected and any other requests for modification. So after any necessary updates are made and we pass QA, we can go ahead and merge on our Git version control service with approval, which will automatically trigger a CI/CD pipeline to promote once again to our higher environment, a production environment, where we know that our network automation is sound and ready for implementation in production. So I'll go ahead and do my screen share of my local dev IAP environment, where I can showcase this entire process. As previously mentioned, I'm now screen sharing my local development environment of IAP, where I have built several automation assets that make up a network automation. On screen, I'm showing the automation and operations manager, which is the kickoff for my automation, which I've called demo automation. That operations manager automation references a workflow named demo workflow parent, which I have here. That demo workflow parent references a child workflow, which I have here, called demo workflow child. And that demo workflow child will utilize a JST. The next step for me would be to package these automation assets together as a pre-built automation for easy use with CI/CD and Git version control. Within Itential's open source GitLab, I can find pre-builts for pre-built wizard and pre-built promotion, which I'll be demoing today. These pre-builts are easily installable within your IAP environment by navigating to Admin Essentials, pre-builts, and clicking the cloud icon. Browsing pre-builts, I can search for pre-built wizard and pre-built promotion. It can be readily installed and viewed from Admin Essentials. Let's open pre-built wizard and bundle together my automation assets in my development IAP environment. In creating a bundled network automation, I'm presented with several options in this form for kickoff. I'll be able to provide a scope, which is like a label for my pre-built automations. By default, local is provided, but you can use whatever you like as long as it complies with the @ format, which is described here in our tooltip. For pre-built name, I'll call this Mitch Demo. Apply the same to the pre-built description. A license will be provided by default, so I can leave this as it is. Go ahead and add my name. The default README of Markdown will be provided, which can be updated now or later. I'll go ahead and leave the README as default for now. By selecting zero touch, the automation will run end to end without the need for any manual tasks from the user. I'm presented with an option to provide categories or keywords for my pre-built. In this case, I'll leave these and move on to the entry points to my pre-built automation, where I can designate an operations manager automation, automation catalog, or automation workflow, which can be provided easily and then will be used to discover all of the remaining automation assets attached therein. So I'll go ahead and search for my demo automation as I previously described and click the run button. Okay, I'm gonna have to do this one again. I know this issue. Give me about 30 seconds. In my cleanup, I just missed that one step there. All right. When I click the run button for Prebuilt Wizard, I'm presented with multiple form fields that allow me to specify details about my network automation that we are bundling. The first form field is for scope, which is like a label that can be used for my pre-built automation or all the pre-built automations of my team or organization, as you prefer. You can provide whatever you like for scope as long as it complies with the @ symbol as described in the tooltip. For pre-built name, I'll be going with simple Mitch demo pre-built. Description is not required, but I'll apply the same there. The license will be provided by default. It's not required. For contributor, I'll go ahead and add my name. Default README in Markdown is provided, which can be edited now or later. If I select zero touch, Prebuilt Wizard will run end to end to create my package without the need for running any manual tasks for the user. I have an option to provide categories and keywords for my pre-built to further designate it. And lastly, I'm presented with the option to select an operations manager automation, automation catalog, or automation workflow as the entry point to my automation, which will be used for discovery and bundling of those previously mentioned automation assets in workflow, transformation, and so on. I'll go ahead and reference the demo automation that I showcased previously and click run. I can view the current job, which should complete quickly with no error. As you can see, we have workflow end, and I can navigate back to Admin Essentials to see my pre-built inventory. Let's refresh and check the local. And I can find my Mitch demo automation, where I find the operations manager automation, those two workflows, and my transformation. So now I have my package, and I'm ready to promote my package to Git version control. In this case, we'll be using GitLab. And you can see on screen where I have an empty GitLab group, which I'll be using as the destination for my new repository. I will copy this group path, as we'll be needing that for pre-built promotion, which we are now ready to run. So as I previously installed Prebuilt Wizard and Prebuilt Promotion, I can easily access Prebuilt Promotion within Admin Essentials and open its Operations Manager automation for kickoff. Here I'm provided with a few additional form inputs, such as designating the target Git version control service, which references an adapter configured to point to your server. In this case, I have a GitLab adapter configured. I have the option to provide a project name. I'll be going with Mitch Demo, same as the pre-built name. I have a few options here, which will not be needed for GitLab, such as this field here for GitHub, as well as the project path for Bitbucket, as those are other supported version control services. For group path, as mentioned before, I have a group here. And I won't need this option to rediscover pre-built, but we will revisit this when it's time to promote an updated version of the pre-built. Again, I'll select the pre-built I just created, Mitch Demo, within the local scope, and scroll down to the final options for MR type and message. On an initial commit, the commit will automatically be placed to create the repository. So I don't need to by any specific required fields here, as it's going to go ahead and automatically place the commit. However, we will utilize these when it's time to update our pre-built and create a merge request. When running pre-built promotion, I'll click auto work to quickly kick off a series of data gathering steps to perform all the needed after kicking off pre-built promotion and clicking the auto work button to trigger a series of steps to gather information about my pre-built as well as my current user, pre-built promotion will continue to complete and publish my new repository on GitLab, which I can now find by navigating to GitLab and refreshing. We can find that repository, which I named Mitch Demo, has been created, and a pipeline is already in progress. Let's open our pipeline, where we can see we have a series of out-of-the-box CI/CD pipeline steps. First, we'll check for security vulnerabilities, which includes checking app dependency versions. We'll move on to validate the manifest of my pre-built, essentially validating that all of the files referenced within my bundle are in fact available and have been pushed to the GitLab repository. We'll move on to perform a version bump before finally generating artifact JSON, which is simply a single file representation of my pre-built for easy import to Admin Essentials. And finally, we will promote to my target staging IAP server, where this network automation I have created can be readily assessed for quality assurance. If I refresh my screen, we'll see that the pipeline is still in progress. And once it completes to promote, we can navigate to my target staging IAP server, where we'll be able to find that pre-built under the local scope. As previously mentioned, I should expect to see one operations manager automation, 2 workflows, and a JST all become available as a package on my target staging IAP server. We've gone on to perform version bump, which we should see update our package JSON version from the current initial version of 001 As we are waiting for promotion to my staging target IAP server to complete, I can also view as individual code files those automation assets that I mentioned. There's my 2 workflows, my transformation, and my operations manager automation. And we'll see the same reflected on the target IAP as well. As our promote to IAP step has completed, I can navigate to my target IAP server and refresh Admin Essentials to reveal my local pre-built Mitch demo, where we see those same components reflected. This is where QA and validation can take place to determine if any further changes are needed to be made before this pre-built is production ready. So a QA tester might open the operations manager automation and do a quick test run. Seems there's an issue with my network automation. I'm unable to kick off my parent workflow, which we should see in Automation Studio. And upon reviewing this pre-built in my staging IAP, I can see that there's an expectation for an incoming job variable for a string to be passed into my parent workflow. I did create a JSON form on my dev environment to provide that incoming job variable from Operations Manager, and I should see that linked on my trigger. Did I really forget to link my JSON form for kickoff of my parent workflow? Let's take a look at the dev environment. I did. Let's go ahead and link my demo JSON form, which will provide a string to the parent workflow, and click Save. So I now have on my development environment an updated version of this network automation. And we want the same to be reflected on GitLab and our target IAP. So we can navigate back to pre-built promotion and kick off an update to be promoted. Most of these form fields will be the same, such as the reference to my pre-built, the group path, and the project name. But in this case, I'll be selecting rediscover pre-built, which will make it easy for us to see the additional JSON form, which will be bundled into our pre-built. I will call this a new commit. I'll give a branch. We'll auto work pre-built promotion. As previously mentioned, this time I've run pre-built promotion with an option for rediscovery. So I should see a listing of my network automation assets, such as the operations manager automation, my 2 workflows, my transformation. And I'll click confirm because this is the first of 2 rediscovery forms. The first form here is showing me what was initially bundled. And when I click confirm, rediscovery will be performed on those components, and will thus discover the JSON form I've linked to my operations manager automation, which I now see here, the demo JSON form. Let's click confirm. We'll confirm once again. We don't need any further rediscovery. And pre-built promotion has completed to promote an updated version of my automation assets to Git. Let's take a look there, where I can see a new merge request has automatically been opened, where those changes, such as the addition of my JSON form, can be reviewed. Let's take a look at changes, where I can see an additional code file for my JSON form has been added here, as well as the operations manager automation code file has been updated to link that demo JSON form that I mentioned. Obviously, our manifest has been updated as well to reflect the addition of a new component. And a pipeline is already in progress to create an updated version of the bundle file artifact.json. For this to be promoted to my target IAP, I'll need to approve and merge this MR in order for that update to be posted to the target IAP. So as I just reviewed the changes and confirmed my expectation of an additional component, as well as the change in a reference in the manifest and the operations manager automation, I'll go ahead and approve and instruct this to merge when the pipeline succeeds. On any commit, a subset of the pipeline steps will be performed, as I mentioned, which will culminate in the generation of a new bundled artifact.json file after performing those checks for security vulnerabilities, as well as validating the updated manifest. Once these steps complete, our merge request can be merged, and we'll see the full set of pipeline steps be performed, including version bump and promotion to target IAP. As mentioned, the initial set of pipeline steps will culminate in the update of our artifact.json file, which I've reviewed, and I'm ready to merge. And as you can see here, the full set of pipeline steps will be performed out of the box from pre-built promotion, culminating in a promotion step. As we are waiting for the full set of pipeline steps to complete, I'd like to give an overview of the steps that we have performed, starting on my development IAP server, creating automation assets for bundling, and performing a bundle using pre-built wizard, and then promoting to Git using pre-built promotion. Once on Git, pipeline steps will be performed out of the box to check for security vulnerabilities, validate our manifests and code files, perform a version bump, generate a single file representation of the pre-build for easy import to a target IAP before finally performing that promotion and deployment in my target IAP server. Accordingly, on the target IAP, I should expect to see an updated version 003 to stream in that contains my JSON form and to be ready for kickoff from Operations Manager. As the final step of pipeline steps to promote to a target IAP is soon to complete, which is performed only on a merge to the primary branch of my Git repository, which I've just performed into my master branch, we can view my target IAP server and watch live as those components are updated. And as you can see, my version 003 is now available on the target staging IAP, where in this case, a JSON form has in fact been bundled with my demo automation. With which we will be able to use to provide an incoming string to the parent workflow. Let me just do that again. And as you can see, version 003 of my network automation package, which I've labeled Mitch Demo, is available on my target staging IAP server for further quality assurance testing. I see the JSON form has been added, and if I view the Operations Manager automation, I'll see the same as being reflected there, where I can now provide the necessary incoming job variable to my parent workflow and kick off this automation. Thus completes the out-of-the-box CI/CD pipeline architecture that comes with pre-built in Itential automation platform. Morgan, I'm happy to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mitch. I want to take a moment to thank everybody who's attended to our webinar, and hope you found this informative. We're here to answer any questions in the chat that you have on this topic, and like to wish you a happy day. Thanks. Take care.